Good morning, everyone. My name is Giacomo Angelini. I'm a partner with MNP. We're a full-service accounting, tax, and consulting firm located on Northfield Drive. And today I have the pleasure of introducing to you today's keynote speaker, Carol Leaman. And I'm going to stick to the script because I'm not with the committee. Carol Leaman is the CEO of Axonify, Inc., a software platform that combines brain science, adaptive microlearning, gamification, and predictive analytics to increase employee knowledge and dramatically change behavior. The result is that employees perform at their best and get you the business outcomes you're looking for. Prior to joining Axonify, Carol was the CEO of PostRank, a social engagement analytics company that she sold to Google in June 2011. Previously, Carol had held CEO positions at several other technology firms, including RSS Solutions and Fake Space Systems, both of which were sold to strategic buyers. Carol's a frequent speaker, and I've saw her before and she's great, so we're fortunate to have her today. She's a regular contributor to industry magazines and has won multiple awards. Carol sits on the boards of numerous for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our speaker, Carol Leaman.
Thanks, Giacomo. When I get introduced, I have to say, I chuckle inside because it makes me sound way more powerful than I actually am. And I have actually some personal friends that I see in the audience here that I didn't know were showing up, and they know I'm actually not that powerful. When we go for coffee and my hair is up and I'm in my yoga pants. Anyway, I am thrilled to be back speaking at a chamber event. I really appreciate the opportunity to do that whenever I can and meet new friends in the community. Many of you I do know. And hopefully some of the things I'm going to say aren't repetitive, and you have hopefully not heard a lot of this stuff from me before. When I was asked to speak about workplace innovation of culture, you know, right off the top you think, oh, culture, it's a fairly common topic. And I can talk about, you know, the relevant things I have to say. It's actually, as I put a few slides together, a more difficult topic to talk about than you might think, and especially, you know, for 30 minutes. So I'm going to hopefully convey a few tidbits over the next half an hour that are useful for you as you go back to work and think about your own culture and yourself and how you contribute to culture. So I'm told that the slides, the clicker is a little difficult. Oh, here we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is very, very quickly, some of you who I know have seen this before will hopefully not be too bored, but very quickly lead you through my career and only from the point of view of talking about the culture of those organizations, each of one that I worked at. So I was born in Newfoundland, actually. Grew up in Ottawa, went to University of Waterloo. There, we're done. Okay, this is supposed to be a build slide. But it's not building. Okay. I'm going to just tell you about my journey. I'll go back here. So when I finished University of Waterloo, I did an accounting degree, and I became a chartered accountant, which is now a CPA. And went to work at KPMG. So I did my co-op terms, and then after graduation, went to work at KPMG. And I would say, in a word, so this was 30 years ago. And you know, as we all know now, the workplace 30 years ago was extremely different than it is today. So the word that I would use to describe the culture of KPMG 30 years ago was homogenous. Very, very homogenous. We all had the same education. We all did the same job. We all, there were large groups of people that were of similar age, sort of, you know, they hired lots of new grads all at once. So you kind of worked with a lot of people that were in a very similar age and stage as you. So very homogenous. It was, you know, there was There were no highs and lows. It was just hard work. And so the other word I would use to describe it was just you gave it your all. There was no work-life balance. It was back in the day, actually, when that phrase, work-life balance, was just starting to become part of the lexicon of work. But it was not prevalent. The expectation was, you work till 11 o'clock at night, and you just got the work done by the deadline. So that was kind of the feel of that organization. I left KPMG because I was recruited to go to Elektra Home, which at the time was a small public company based here in town. Elektra Home was founded in 1908, and when I got there in 1994, the grandson of the original founder was the CEO, a man by the name of John Pollock. And the culture of Elektra Home at that time, in a word, was old white guys club. And I say that with love. And I was a 26-year-old young female, and the most senior female, actually, by position, by role, job role, that they had hired ever. And so I found myself in an environment that was very much dark wood, quiet hallways, the executive suite way on one side of the building, and very structured ways of thinking about how you behaved at work. And as it happens, I was hired by a guy who didn't exhibit any of those things. He was a younger, mid-30s guy who sort of blew things up. He was the antithesis of that culture, which had its own interesting dynamics that ultimately changed a lot of things. But that was kind of what it was when I went in there. I left Elektra Home to go to a subsidiary company that we bought called Fake Space. And it was a very high-end virtual reality company during the dot-com boom. So things were going crazy. We all heard these nutty stories about entrepreneurs who had literally nothing, an idea, and were getting funded with valuations of hundreds of millions of dollars for their idea. And people were making money hand over fist. And so there was this kind of, at Fake Space, excitement and expectation. The culture was kind of like, just go crazy and this thing's going to explode and do all the things that you need to do, and very cowboy-like during that dot-com boom. Then the bust came, and the culture almost turned on a dime. It was, oh, now we have to actually make money because this gravy train doesn't last forever. And so there was this whole feeling that came over the company that was very different than it was prior to that dot-com boom. After I left Fake Space, I sold the company. I went to work at a software company here in town that was struggling, and I was hired by the private equity firm to come in, do a turnaround, and the culture of that company was, the word that comes to mind for me is mediocrity. It was 45 or 50 people who were performing at a very, very mediocre level. And nobody was holding them accountable to anything. There was no excitement. They had customer problems, product problems. They had problems on every front, which is why they were struggling. And that feeling had ingrained itself in those 45 or 50 people. And so there was an expectation that, we're just going to kind of middle along here and go somewhere, I guess. And that was very, very difficult to change because the mindset was quite ingrained in that staff. I did end up selling that company a couple of years later, and then decided to take a year or two off just to invest in companies myself. And the whole entrepreneurial environment in Kitchener-Waterloo at the time was blowing up. And so Ian Klugman had gone to Communitech. There were 10 people. He asked me to start an executive in residence program for Communitech. And there were lots of early stage companies coming out of the woodwork. University of Waterloo had gotten onto this idea that they could be farming ground for early stage tech. So there are a lot of exciting things going on in the community. This is around the mid-2000s. And so I spent a couple of years investing and helping early stage tech companies, and then met one of them, met the entrepreneurs of one of them called, the company was called PostRank, and invested in them and ended up going to run that company a few months later. And the culture there was, I used to joke all the time, it was me and a bunch of 12-year-olds. And very, very different than anything I'd ever experienced. The previous organizations I worked for did have a cross-section of age ranges. This one didn't. I was the outlier. I was the edge case by a long margin. And so that culture was, literally, it was almost like mom and the kids. And mom trying to reinforce good behavior in the kids and keep them in line and get them doing the right things and, you know, that kind of thing. And that was a bit of a struggle at times because as I learned with my own children who were not that much younger, we have socialized our children these days. I hate to break it to y'all, but we have socialized our children to have a different sensibility about work. And, you know, when I was growing up, I don't know about the rest of you, but when I was growing up, I did not get asked what color couch we should buy or, you know, what kind of car I thought, you know, what opinion. They didn't seek my opinion. When we went on vacation, it was get in the car. And, you know, I didn't get asked, do you want to go to the Dominican? Do you want to go to, there was none of that going on. Our kids have been socialized to be asked everything. We solicit their opinions on many, many things. And so PostRank was, when I decided on what the color of the paint was going to be on the walls, I got the, yeah, no, I'd like my paint around my desk to be blue. Really? Like, so it was that kind of much more participatory to the most granular level sort of culture there. Big learning experience for me and a wonderful one, actually. When I sold PostRank, I was recruited I actually was recruited, but I didn't go there. I ended up deciding I sold PostRank to Google in 2011 and deciding not to go to Google and instead to buy Axonify, what the grains of Axonify were, which is the company I have now. And Axonify really was my first opportunity to truly build something from the ground up. And in doing that, I didn't acquire a culture. I was able to create the culture. And that has been just a hands down, very, very different experience than any of the previous experiences. So I would challenge you to just think about where you work. And if you had to come up with a phrase or a word to describe the culture that you work in, guaranteed all of you, if you just put a minute's thought to it, would be able to coalesce around a phrase or a word. And the thing about that is it comes down to this. It's a system of shared assumptions, values, and beliefs which governs how people behave, and that's the key. How your workplace culture drives so much behavior. It's crazy when you think about that. And so what you want to do is where you have the opportunity to change culture, think about what it impacts, and then what are those little granular things you can do to move things in the right direction if they're not there already. So, culture is a feeling. It's how you feel when you go to work. When you think about that, do I feel good? Do I feel bad? Do I feel blasé? Do I feel like I can just, hide and do something? Or do I feel like I'm in a place where I'm valued and participating? It is really that glue or that fabric that ties an organization together. Again, it's the feeling. And it is created. And it is created by every single person that's in the organization. And it impacts your brand. So I can tell you, I could point to a number of companies in town right now. I'm, and I only speak of tech because I'm well embedded in the tech community and not a whole lot else. But, when I think of certain companies in town, just based on what I hear people saying and talking about, I can point to a handful of companies that I believe, I don't have any firsthand knowledge, but I believe have great cultures. And I can point to a handful of other companies that I know people work at that I think they've got some serious, deep-rooted cultural issues. So culture does get out there and it impacts the brand of the organization that you work for. So you should think about that. What culture is not? I don't know why. Here we go. It is not all those things like ball pits and lunches and things that people layer on to your organization that they think is going to create culture. Those things are nice to have, but I can tell you at Axonify, we do lunch once every 2 weeks, and it is so that we can do an all-company meeting to keep people updated on what's going on. So, I'm not serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner and taking people's stuff out for dry cleaning and, doing all that kind of stuff, which is nice if you can get it, but that's not what culture's about. Those things are designed actually to keep you at work as long as possible. That's what they're designed to do. Culture is also not something you can impose. You can't just say, we need to have a great culture, therefore make it so. And it is not easy to change. You can change it. I'll hopefully give you a tip or two, but it's not easy to change. Times have changed. Okay, I had pictures. I don't know what happened, but this was a picture of a workplace. What I intended to say on this slide was this. Back when I was going into the workforce and when I was interviewing people at work, it used to be the case that I would never ask or be asked about culture, ever. It was the job, what are my qualifications, how do I best meet those, you designed your resume to parrot the words that were in the job posting, and it was all about that, your special interests, things like that. You never asked about culture. Now, I can tell you, probably for the last 5 years, every single interview of a new employee I do, when I turn it around to them and say, do you have any questions for me? The number one question they ask is, what's it like to work here? What's the culture like? Beyond anything else, they always ask that. And so culture has become incredibly important in your recruiting efforts, and it's because people have choice about where they want to go to work. And the workforce has changed. They're much more enlightened about the desire to want to work in a place they want to work at. And career and what you're going to do for me and all of that is almost secondary to how does it feel to work there. Are we going to try to get my pictures? The pictures are pretty, that's all. Hey, there we go. Okay. Okay, so the modern employee needs something very, very different today. It goes back to what I said a moment ago about the characteristics of the modern employee are extremely different than what I was as an employee 30 years ago and even 20 years ago, going into new jobs and into the workforce. They have a lot more flexibility than, at least in their minds, than we used to have. And so when you think about it from a Maslow's hierarchy of needs perspective, when I joined the workforce, you were looking to meet your basic needs. You were looking to get an income. You were looking for security, job security, a career path, something to get on your resume that you could point to and be proud of, all of those sorts of things. That was what you were looking for when you went out to find a job. Today's modern employee is looking for those things as table stakes. Yeah, I expect you to give me a good paycheck and job, interesting job and all of that. But what I'm actually looking for is, how are you, employer, going to make me a better person? What are you going to do for me? Whereas years ago, my mindset was, how can I work so hard they want to keep me? That was my mindset. And it's completely flipped in today's environment, which has had a massive cultural impact on organizations. And some are still struggling with it, particularly those that have been around for many, many years. Again, culture is difficult to change when you've got decades of history behind you. But you really need to get on this train, because employees can vote with their feet. Employees have the opportunity to get out there and go find other things, and they are out there. So the way I think about it is like this. If you had to think about your company as a person, so think about that. If my company was a person, and we did this exercise 7 years ago when we started Axonify, if I had to think about it as a person, what would I want that person to be like? I would want that person, and these were our words, to be dynamic, smart, positive, authentic, and likable. Those were the words that we wanted our customers to think about when they thought about Axonify, and our team, our product, our company generally. And these are the attributes that we use to now hire people, to mentor people, to basically embed that feeling in the culture of the way that we expect them to behave, so that we can all execute to our maximum potential. So I challenge you to think about that too. If your company was a person, what are the characteristics that would describe it today, and what are the characteristics you want it to be described as? So here are my learnings. First of all, culture starts at the top. For those of you who can't see, sorry. It's Donald Trump. This is absolutely true. So again, when I purchased Axonify, I picked up 2 employees, the source code, and 1 customer. So it was basically nothing. And it did allow me to ingrain the way I wanted the culture to be. And at the end of the day, culture for me is about everybody just needs to check their ego at the door, be a normal person, please. Normal and mature person, exercise good judgment. The old adage, treat people like you want to be treated, and just work hard. And if you work hard, you'll get recognized for it. You'll make that headway in your career, and you'll open up tons of doors for yourself. That is the way I grew my career. It was just trying to do the thing as hard as I could and be a normal person and treat everybody with respect. And when you don't have an individual in a position of leadership behaving that way, ego comes in. It's this whole fear factor, all those sorts of negative emotions. It's very difficult to get other people to mimic your behavior. So I will say this, it does start at the top, but it also starts with you. So how do you innovate and change something that, has a situation where you've got somebody at the top not exhibiting those sorts of behaviors and values? Here's a story. Years ago, at one of those companies, I worked with a woman who was extremely negative. She was the glass half full or half empty person. Every single thing that she showed up with, there was a sour look on her face. She started with the negative. It was, why not this? Why not that? Poor me. And I was young and naive at the time. And I just thought, wow, like, I don't know what happened to her in life, but I did not engage. All I did was I would say to her, Donna, wow, where did you get that shirt? You look awesome today. Or I heard you did this thing and somebody was complimenting you on it. Or, I have this thing going on. I'd love your opinion about it. And all I did was just pound her with positivity, pound her over and over and over again. And it took a month. And I remember it distinctly. It took a month, and suddenly she started showing up in my office with a smile on her face and an attitude of, hey, what did you do last night? Did you have a good weekend? Did you have a good evening? And it was just this shift in perspective that she had, which I know in speaking to others bled out into her interactions with other people. So the lesson is this: there may be negativity going on around you, but you can be that kernel of good things that don't get yourself sucked in. Don't go down that path of engaging in blah. No, who feels good doing that? Nobody feels good bitching and complaining. Who does? Unless it's about your husband, kidding. I don't have a husband anymore, though. You get my point. So the key things about that are be vulnerable as a leader. If you're in a position of leadership, and I can tell you every single one of us is, we are the boss of we. I am the boss of me, you are the boss of you. Be vulnerable, be honest, be positive, be open, and be steady. Those are the qualities that you want to have that end up getting out there and impacting other people and creating culture. Number 2, continually make people feel like they matter, because they do. One of the things I do when I onboard new employees, so we do an onboarding thing with everybody, and I say to every single one of them, and I don't care if they're a 19-year-old co-op student or a 60-year-old developer, my expectation of you is that you are going to do your best work and that you're going to end up leaving Axonify thinking it was the best place you ever worked in your career. Even if it's the first place you're working or it's the last place you're working or somewhere in the middle, I want you to come away thinking that you added value, that you contributed to the success of the organization, that you're a positive influence on everybody else, and that you mattered here. And I tell them it matters to me. What they do and think and the judgment they exercise every single day, the decisions they make, all roll up to other things. There's nothing done in isolation. And so what they decide to do and how they decide to think has a very measurable impact on everybody else. So think about it that way. And I tell that to them, and then I repeat it over and over and over again. So I tell them right from day one. I try my best to give people opportunities to stretch. We've had some great promotions that have happened this year because people have demonstrated capability internally, and so those stretch opportunities have been given to them, and it just energizes people. Don't be afraid to give people things to do that even they think they can't do. They can do it. We're all smart people. We all figure stuff out. Now, if somebody said to me, can you operate on this person's spine today? I would say no. But for the most part, we can all pick things up, and you need to be thinking about giving people opportunities to stretch, not keeping it here because you're afraid. Be human, be visible. When we built our new office, I very purposefully built a glass office. So people joke that I live at the front of the building in a fish tank, and I call it the shark tank, but I'm very visible to people, and they see that I work just like they do. that I have people in my office all the time. I invite people in to chit chat, and it creates this culture of transparency, literally, and openness that you want to have. That Carol's not sitting up in this ivory tower, and you can't talk to her or shoot the breeze or share something about the business with her. Explain things. We, at our team lunches every 2 weeks, go through good things that have gone on, bad things that have gone on, whatever the case may be. We share everything with everybody. One thing I know from having worked in other places is if you don't tell people what's going on, the good, bad, and the ugly, and to a very high degree, like a depth, people make stuff up. They hear little things, then they blow it into this big thing, and before you know it, people are walking around thinking your company's bankrupt. And so you just need to have this ongoing thing where it's okay to talk about the wrong things happening, and it's okay to celebrate the good things happening. Reward good behavior. You really do need to celebrate. So we had our team lunch yesterday. One of the things on the standard agenda is I invite people up to say, who wants to recognize somebody else who's done something great the last 2 weeks? And we typically have at least 5, sometimes 10 people come up to the room to pick up the microphone and say, I want to recognize so-and-so. They helped me out on this thing. It made a huge difference to that project. This is why. And so it's peers recognizing peers, the simplest of rewards. But it makes people feel good, and we make them stand up in the crowd and clap and all of those sorts of things. And again, it goes back to making people feel like they matter. Third thing, reinforce. Just keep doing all of those things. And even if it's hard and there are days that, you just go, I don't like working here. Keep going. You are that grain of culture that can impact others. And so just keep going. Don't let bad behavior go. If you see somebody not, certainly if you're in a position of leadership over other people, do not let bad behavior go. Address it. I had to have a very tough conversation with an employee a couple of years ago who was passed over for a promotion. And it was a case of just not having the skills and capabilities to be in a people leadership position. And she was extremely upset. And that morphed into very negative behavior in the workplace. And I took her out for lunch because she's a valued employee. She has a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge and product knowledge. Customers love her, and yet her interactions with everybody else in the workplace were highly negative, and it was affecting her whole team. So that team developed a culture. And, I basically had to hit her with it between the eyeballs and say, she complained to me, nobody wants to talk to me, nobody wants to include me in their projects, nobody wants to, blah, 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 nobody. And I said, I'll tell you why. Because you look like, you've got this look on your face, like you're gonna shoot a dagger into their neck if they talk to you. So nobody wants to talk to you. And every time somebody asks you for help, you go, no, I don't have time. And so I just laid it out for her, and I ended with, I want you here, and I want you to add value, and you can in this huge way, but it starts with you changing your behavior. And she said to me, how do I do that? I said, I'll tell you how you do it. Tomorrow morning, you walk in the office, you have a big fat smile on your face, and if somebody says to you, hey, anything, you go, how can I be helpful? And then turn to the person that works next to you and say, so what did you do last night? And start to engage in conversation and turn that around for you, because you've pushed everybody away and you've become that culture of one. So, happy to say, 2 years later, she's phenomenal. So last thing, think about culture like an immune system. It's an analogy that I have used with the team at Axonify, and it's worked. If you can build a really, really strong culture and get to that place where it feels good. Back to the feeling, it feels good. What ends up happening is this: if you hire somebody who doesn't exhibit those values, it's almost like the virus trying to penetrate the body. And they can't penetrate it because the body is strong. And they start to realize that they're the outlier. Their attitudes and behaviors can't hit the mothership because the mothership has a really strong culture and immune system. And they do one of two things. They either get in line and start to exhibit those good behaviors, or they self-select out. And I've seen both of those things happen as we've grown. So the whole goal is to create that really strong immune system. So why is it king? Because, as I said before, employees will vote with their feet. They have lots of choice and they will go elsewhere. Word does get around, and it's hard to change. So, I do know I have employees say to me all the time when we hire them, I've heard this is such a great place to work. And, we put a tremendous amount of effort into making that true, applying for rewards. In fact, our VP of HR, who's here today, was in Toronto yesterday. We won a Platinum Award for Best Place to Work by Aon. Oh, well, didn't attend that, but those things are quite visible in the community, and when you're trying to attract top talent, and given the focus on culture today, those things matter. You get the best out of your people, goes without saying, and if you do start on the right foot, it's very easy to build that immunity and then keep going. It's hard for one person or a handful of people to break down what is strong. And that was it. Thank you.